Tomorrow and Friday, 844-500-4242. Press 2 for the chump line, and I want to hear like funny stuff on the chump line. I want to hear the tape of the Healy hate line. I want you guys to tell me what microaggressions are being fostered against you. HowieCarShow.com. Click on Howie Cam. My guest joining me now from the Washington Free Beacon is a gentleman named Adam Kredo. And I read this article, the headline, which is Obama administration covering up key Iran deal details in final days. Welcome, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Listen, I'm going to let you get to this because I want you to explain to people just what this means. But I can't help but be struck by the fact that Marco Rubio is leading a charge in Washington to try and put brakes in front of this, put a wall in front of this until January 20th. And it seems like the administration is pushing back as hard as they can.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's a good observation. And essentially, there's not much legislatively that Congress can do in terms of exposing the secrets about the Iran deal that we still have yet to know. But let me pull it back a little bit for us. Essentially, what's taking place here is that in January, the administration held secret diplomacy with Iran, and it worked on 3 separate tracks. The Iranians wanted sanctions rolled back on a bank that they used to fund their illicit ballistic missile program. That's potentially nuclear-type weapons that could carry that type of payload. And the U.S. wanted hostages freed, and the Iranians wanted a cash payment. So this was all bound out in one deal. And I think you'll remember that when the American hostages were actually freed, there was a slight delay there. That was so a plane carrying this $1.7 billion in cash could be delivered.
And it wasn't.
Now,
two things.
Yeah.
Let me just jump. 2 things. It was in cash, and none of it was in American dollars, number one. And 2,
right.
Didn't one of the hostages say they sat on the runway for something like 20 hours until this plane arrived?
Precisely. The Iranians would not let the Americans go until that plane got there. We only know this detail because of the reporting from Jay Solomon in the Wall Street Journal, who traveled to Europe and got it confirmed from European officials that banknotes and other types of currency were loaded literally onto pallets, put into a plane, and delivered to an Iranian official, at which point we washed our hands of it. They became in control of all of that money. Now, what Rubio and others, including Mike Pompeo, who Trump has picked to be the next CIA director, they've been trying to investigate this. How is it not a ransom payment? You can say that it was part of a track of diplomacy, and the administration says that it's to resolve legal claims the Iranians have against us. But every data point we have points to this being a ransom. Now, the details of this are out there. It's just that they're being stored on Capitol Hill in a secure facility nobody can get to unless you have security clearance. And the cherry on top of this really is that the documents aren't classified. They're just being treated.
Okay, so let me ask you then, because this is a point I was asking Steve before this. It's in your piece, you said secret documents stored on Capitol Hill and treated in a classified manner. You've seen them?
No, I'm not permitted to see them. Those who are permitted to see them have to have top secret security clearance, so that would be members of Congress themselves or senior staff. Not many senior staff actually have a clearance, so it's difficult. Once you go to view these documents, you relinquish your cell phone, all types of pen, paper, anything of that matter, and you can view the documents. You cannot take notes on them, and you cannot discuss their contents. This is typically how we treat the most highly secured classified information. It's just that these documents aren't actually classified. The Obama administration is forcing them to do this. Now, if you talk about it, it's very easy to tell because you have to sign your name. So the administration can look over the list and see who's actually visited these documents. So
let me ask you something. What could the Obama administration do from a legal perspective to hide these documents from the Trump administration?
Well, it's going to be difficult to hide it from Trump and that administration, and that's why I think Rubio is kind of angling for Trump to come in and help him dismantle this deal. I don't think they'll be able to hide the documents that way, but it could be kept very easily from the American people. It's a matter of Trump administration officials want to disclose that information. The other piece of this is the deal itself has several portions in it that even U.S. officials are not privy to. Those are agreements between Iran and international nuclear inspectors, and the Iranians have said, we'll only agree with it if the U.S. can't see it.
Talking with Adam Kredo from the Washington Free Beacon, he's kind of been a point man on the Obama administration, and they're covering up of the key details in the Iran deal, and there are more than one. What you just said worries me in light of the fact that if I believe it was 12 of the people involved in this on the Iranian side have been arrested in the last week to 10 days. They were scientists or inspectors involved in this. I don't know what the story is, but they're in jail and things like that. Listen, you and I both know, and every free-thinking American, normal-thinking American knows that we just made a deal with someone who has no intention of abiding by they've broken the sanctions already, what, 5 or 6 times?
Exactly, and they're actually, as we speak, in violation of the nuclear deal. They're currently stockpiling too much heavy water, that's nuclear byproduct, to help them do research.
So what's the desire to fight? What's the will like in Congress to fight this, to stand up and say, you know what, this is crap. We can't do this.
Well, look, there is a will, and there has been for some time, and I think that's why we've seen these investigations. But even though Congress legally has this role of oversight and certainly the right to do it, the Obama administration, in terms of the Treasury Department, the Attorney General, the DOD, and others, have all stonewalled, particularly the State Department, mind you, and telling lawmakers, look, we'll respond to all the questions you send us, but we won't actually tell you any new information. It's a workaround for them. It's a way to dodge.
Okay, so I got to ask you about and I'm using air quotes here, even though you can't see them, our allies in Saudi Arabia. There's a story out that they do not want this repealed.
Well, no, I think we are going to see that a lot as Trump considers what to do. The Saudis, look, are always seeking to check Iranian power, and they think that if U.S. has some sort of oversight on Iran, that could be a check. And look, if the actual mechanisms in this place in terms of the deal were there to check the Iranians, that would be a good thing. The problem is the deal does not do that. And, of course, Russia, China, it's in their interest to keep this deal going. They're the biggest clients of Iran. The Russians are right now thinking a $10 billion arms deal with the Iranians. So there's a lot of pressure to keep this thing going.
So, yeah, well, also, not that it isn't an important point, but Hillary Clinton sold how much uranium to Russia, and which bothers me more than a little bit, in addition to all the other stuff. Talking with Adam Kredo from the Washington Free Beacon about the cover-up on the Iran details. So we know for a fact that this country, this government, negotiated and bargained ransom for terrorists. Here's the thing I don't get. You said there were sanctions versus a bank involved that Iran wanted lifted, correct?
Uh-huh.
And so we offered hostages in return for that, and then they asked for cash in addition?
Yeah, that's correct. The cash was taken from a legal judgment fund. Now, look, to be fair, the administration would say this was to settle claims outstanding at The Hague, the International Claims Court, and those are things, but the Iranians were saying that, look, we're not going to let you settle this until we get what we want. So the cash was part of that legal settlement. The sanctions really were another track that the Iranians demanded, and that was above and beyond the nuclear deal. Look, we didn't have to do this. We had sanctioned this bank. It's called Bank SEPA, for those who want to look it up. And it had been under sanctions for some time. It's really the main channel the Iranians use to funnel money to this ballistic missiles program.
Hey, Adam, this is Steve. During the campaign, there was a moment when Ted Cruz and Donald Trump were together giving a speech in Washington, D.C., and Ted Cruz said something to the effect of, it was a warning to companies who would consider doing business in Iran, saying the Obama administration's deal, it's not the last straw on this, and if companies are going to do business in Iran, they could face prosecution from, then he was thinking, a Cruz administration. Is there any kind of, legal crackdown that's going to come on companies that leapt at the opportunity to do business with Iran?
Yeah, I think that's very likely. There are two pieces to this. One, the Obama administration just today gave permission, those are licenses, that allow Airbus, a French company, to sell planes to Iran Air. That's its national carrier. American company Boeing is looking to do the same thing, but lawmakers actually passed a bill in the House just last week to stop this, to prevent the Treasury Department from granting these licenses that let a company like Boeing skirt sanctions and proceed with business. I think this is a fight that's only going to develop more and more under a Trump administration. And I'll note to all of you, the reason this is so controversial is it's not just commercial airplanes. The Iranians have a history of converting commercial planes for use in their military, and at this moment they still have in their Air Force several Boeing planes that were once in commission in the United States.
Well, I can tell you, Adam, from my knowledge of military history, it's why their Air Force always gets its ass kicked, because they're using commercial American airplanes in their military. I heard something today, and I'm sorry that it's off the cuff, but I heard something today about Boeing getting the okay for $20 billion in Airbuses to Iran.
Right. So that was the Obama administration granting the license to Airbus.
Okay.
Boeing has yet to get this license, and honestly, I think they're very, very nervous about it. Look, Boeing knows there's no taste for this in Congress, and that they could suffer a crackdown because of this. Their business could suffer, and I think there's a very, very simple question for Boeing. Do you want to do business with a hardline extremist regime, or do you want to continue to have good relations with everyone else in the international community and business world, particularly lawmakers?
Well, I got to ask you, excuse me, how does a nation keep its rights in The Hague if it condones atrocity, if it condones the abuse and killing of women, homosexuals, and it wages open war? How do you keep your seat in The Hague? How does that work?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And look, this I blame on these international communities we build, like the United Nations. You know, the Iranians sit on a human rights committee in the United Nations. In no other world would this make sense except the world of the United Nations and that diplomatic channel. It's quite frightening. So, yeah, the Iranians have a spot, and there's actually a dedicated channel in The Hague for Iran-U.S. claims. They have quite a few claims for military deals we never made good on after the 79 revolution in Iran.
Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. Fascinating stuff. Adam Kredo, Washington Free Beacon. It's at freebeacon.com. I implore you guys to read this stuff. It's fascinating. It's insightful. It's potentially scary as well. Adam, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
This hour of the Howie Carr Show is brought to you in part by Perfect Smiles. Don't be fooled by imposters with similar names. Go to Perfect Smiles in Nashua, New Hampshire. That's perfectsmiles.com. I'm Kurt Schilling in for Howie Carr. We'll take a break. We'll be back in a minute.
That's right. Howie Carr.